Hi guys, this is Jackie Cooper and with JCooperTravels, and today we have a really special treat. I have Richmond here, who is a phenomenal musician, and he's going to be telling us more about his story of how he got started in music and what he's doing. I feel really grateful that he's here because it's going to be like a little mini private concert for a short amount of time. But Richmond, tell me, thank you so much. I know you're doing so much. Tell me a little bit about your story, how you got started in music, because I know your story is going to inspire others.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate you. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I I started where I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I started at the age of 5 years old in public Montessori school there in Dallas, where we had some really, really great teachers and obviously a really cool educational system to think of, schools like Montessori and Magnet and those types of schools. So they sat us down at a concert and they were like, kids, if you hear something you like, pick it, point and choose. And I was like, they started playing, whatever, thumb, bum, 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 bum. I was like, and it's the whole like string orchestra. I'm like, that one. And it's the violin side, And so they're like, okay, cool. We're going to get you that. And you're going to take it home to mom and dad and show it to them. And, and, but like, we didn't know about this whole thing before entering the school. So when it's brought home, it looks like a complete foreign object, especially to my mom. You know, uh, we happen to be from, not necessarily from classical music background. The violin is more or less in the unfamiliar side. So when it's brought home, I'm like, Mom, look. They were like, point and choose, and I picked. Here it is. I brought it home, and I want to learn this. And she's like, what's that? And I'm like, it's the, whatever I said, violin. 5 years old, right? And she says, I don't know what to do with this. So here, no, take it back. Take it back. So I took it back to school, and the teacher sent it back with me to my mom like the next day, and she's like, tell your mom I said to keep it. It's gonna be good for you. And I did, and I stuck with it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know that my daughter at first thought she would like to play the violin, and then she ended up doing the oboe. What inspired you as you grew to know the instrument that made you want to stick with it and not switch over to something else?
Oh, sure. Well, one was that I got I don't know. I grew up as a more disciplined child. For one, I was always practicing and playing, and where others were sometimes being mischievous, you know, running around, doing different things, yelling at people, tag, but you tagged them too hard, and all those things in childhood. I was over there playing the violin, so just kind of over there sawing away, and so my mom knew that I was doing that. That was good, and I just
Yeah.
it was built-in motivation. I would play until I maybe passed out or something. I don't know.
So when you were playing the violin, did you think that you might be playing it when you were an adult and this might be a career, or what did you think of it just like a passing interest, or was this always something that you knew you wanted to do long term?
I think there was a point early on um, that I did feel like it was something I could do long term, especially uh, when I started receiving scholarships in music around the age of 9. Um, to study music not just in school but outside of school on the weekends and 5 days a week in the summer. And I was like, somebody cares about me playing this. It's not just me here. Somebody thinks that else thinks this is good for me too. And I started getting the scholarship started increasing. Some of my first travel was in part because of scholarships. I went to UT Austin summer camp in Austin, Texas. I went to I got into the arts high school. The same school where I was at 5 took me all the way to high school. I was in a performing arts magnet high school in Dallas called Booker T. Washington, where the alumni are like Nora Jones and Erica Badu and the late trumpeter Roy Hargrove. And so it was a great, and so I just, it really started to feel like a career because I kept growing up around all these artists, and some of them, of course, world-class, phenomenal artists as we know them today. And I was so inspired by all the singers, rappers, musicians, dancers, actors, painters, everybody, you know. And I was like, well, if they can do this, you know, or be the modern day Picasso, you know, maybe I can make a career out of this, you know.
So I know that you are traveling, that you have, well, I mean, obviously we have COVID, but that you do tour and you do
Yeah,
play. So are you self-managed or do you, how does that work as a business? Because I know you're both a musician as well as a business person. So for
yeah,
those that might not actually know how this works, tell us a little bit more about that.
sure. So, great question. So when I went to my undergrad, one of the best ways I can tell you is to talk about college a little bit. When I went into undergrad at Juilliard, I studied classical music. And so and then my master's was Yale, again in music performance. And my goal was to probably play Beethoven and Mozart and, you know, maybe occasional Aaron Copland, you know, for the rest of my life in an orchestra. But what happened was, after school, I got into a small town symphony, like our suburb, you know, very much a smaller job. So whereas the normal job career-wise would have put me at 80,000 a year, you know, like that, and that's even an average actually in big town symphony like Dallas, where I come from. The smaller town symphony was not quite that. I was like very much not that. So therefore, I had to kind of figure out those aspects of entrepreneurship, which I learned from school, from playing on the streets as well, being in entrepreneurship, even in subway performing, you know, and in the summer working as an usher and working tickets, working even while I trained in summer camps. And I real and then my first job out of college, I taught kids private lessons. And what I realized was that maybe the symphony wasn't the whole thing for me because one, I keep hearing all these people playing, you know, or you go out at night or to a restaurant, you know, and it's Louis Armstrong's on the speaker. Louis Armstrong's over there. You go to the barbecue the next day and Charlie Daniels is over there. You go to eat Italian the other day and Pavarotti's over there. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me I got to play Beethoven the rest of my life? And I can't go play that stuff that I keep hearing on the radio in these fine restaurants, in church, or when I travel. And I was like, no, let me try to figure this out. So I had studied some jazz. It was not a lot. You know, my skills were classical. It wasn't so much, but I discovered the music of Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald. I discovered my high school classmates, like Nora Jones was my classmate. Erica Badu was before me. I discovered Branford Marsalis, the brother of Wynton Marsalis, saxophone, um, and I discovered Tupac, the California West Coast rapper, of, you know, probably most famous. And all those influences led me to try to, one, somebody said, if you want to figure all this out, go to a jam session. So I went to jam sessions and kind of, you know, played my one song and got off the stage, you know. I don't know if somebody's going to clap or boo or if my whole career is about to be a sham or whatever. So, but I played it good and my Tupac sounded really good. You know, I could play like a couple of seconds.
Go ahead. I could listen
Anyway,
to that. I could listen to that. I could listen to that all the time.
so that was formed first from playing things like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and then realizing that it had mildly similarities to Tupac, and the next thing was back to entrepreneurship. You know, I couldn't make signs like this. You know, I needed people to know who I was.
Yeah.
You know, before it was even, I think the internet era was really still just very new. YouTube hadn't really, just was starting. So I just decided one gig at a time that I would get somebody to know me. Um, and so I have managed myself for most of my life, but but March 1st, I moved to Atlanta, and I decided when I came here that I wanted to try to really find a manager since I'm so happy to be in this place of entertainment. And I now have management. But of course, I got management right when COVID hit. So, so our activities haven't been as much as we would like them to be. But yeah, I've been went from self-managed my whole life, and I just turned 40, and I have a manager now.
You know what? That is such an accomplishment from the perspective that you've been so independent and so successful in your career. And, you know, just from hearing you talk, um, it's something that I didn't think. I didn't think schools talked about entrepreneurship. I
Yeah.
knew that they did the traditional music, but I'm really impressed that they actually have a class about that, because whenever you're in any profession, you have to think about both the talent side as well as the business side of it, because
Yeah.
you as a musician also have to understand, and you do, what the money side of it, and to make sure that you can control your royalties, your residuals, everything like that. And if you're not knowledgeable about it, then that means that someone else can take advantage. So it's really great. I'm really impressed that the school even thought about that.
Yes, yes. And really, it was more so the students were bringing it up, and that was how so we brought in guests. Matter of fact, I got to Juilliard, and one of the guests was Branford Marsalis. So I finally actually got to meet the guy whose music I heard as a high schooler. My roommate studied with Wynton Marsalis, so I would go jam with him when he went to Wynton's house for just the jam thing, which it wasn't his classical lesson. That was and I went to jam sessions, and I learned a lot. And it was really the next kids after me really got the full benefit. But we would go to career services and be like, hey, so if we're not gonna play Beethoven, what are we gonna do? And so I believe very much today's schools, they've started to figure that out. They figured out
Yeah.
that people need more than this small aspect of what music is, right? It's not so small, so you can't give it to someone in their career, even in a small knowledge sense, and go, good luck. you know
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to say to everyone who's listening to the podcast and also the YouTube, there's always a block of space above the podcast and above the YouTube, and that's where I'm going to end up putting. So if you're driving, you think, oh, well, how do I listen to more of his music? There's going to be a space there that I'm going to actually end up putting the way that you can contact him and connect with him, and also listen to Richmond's music. And if you are, if you have a need for hiring, obviously, there's that as well, because we need to support our musicians no matter what their level is. And I definitely believe that you are super talented, and I want to support what you're doing, because I've been following you for a while, and I was so excited when I saw you were touring and you were putting music out, and I wanted to have you on the podcast. So I'm really grateful for that. Any words of advice that you have for young musicians that are coming up in the ranks that might not know what to do first or how to get started? Anything, from your experience that you might share with them?
Yes. The one of the main things that I always say is to practice, uh, to never stop practicing. To like my mom got me one of my graduation presents was to from my master's degree was to meet Denzel Washington on Broadway at the time. And he said, and I asked him for advice. I was like, I'm about to go into this. I don't know if it's a symphony, if it's self-employment. I'm so scared, Denzel, but I want it to be really big. I want it to be big. He's like, he's like, I grew up, I was taught to pray and play and to always go give it my best to maximize my creativity, and everything I do could be successful if I did that. So that's really one of my main messages to today's next entrepreneur, next symphony performer as well. So whether you're going to work for yourself or for a corporation, um, you gotta maximize everything that you're doing. Don't think of it as small. Don't look at other people in comparison. Find out how to be creative yourself.
I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for being on today. I know that there'll be other times that you'll be on, as when you kick off different things. I would love to hear more of your music. Any last minute thoughts before we say so long for now?
Yes, sure. I would like to let everyone know some of my upcoming. So I've been using the face shields combined with the mask, and so I have been doing some traveling performances. So I'm right now in the middle of scheduling a middle October performance in Houston, a middle December 12th in Houston, and first week in March, Dallas, Texas. And currently, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, where every week I play at a restaurant called Sage, where I perform Saturday nights and Sunday nights, 4 hours each day.
We'll make sure that all that information gets put onto the little text area for both the YouTube as well as the box. And because guys, listen, subscribe to my YouTube, subscribe to my podcast, because as his schedule changes, I can go back in, it's live, and I can put where he's playing next. So if you subscribe, you can kind of scroll on down and you'll be able to check out where he's going to be. So thank you so much for being on today. I look forward to following you in the future and listening to some more of your great music.
Thank you so much, Jackie Cooper, and I look forward to seeing your travels as well.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one.